Jay Atmeshwar, everyone. This is just a public service announcement / community update that we recorded as part of the Tuesday night live session. We're putting this out there because Rajni and I have gone through a bit of a process in the last couple of weeks around how we're operating as an ashram, which will impact you as someone part of our community. We've had some challenging times, but it's a really exciting time, and we're moving away from commercialization towards a pay it forward model as per individual's capacity and means. So we go on a bit of a meandering journey over the course of this discussion. It is numbers centric. I'm not shy about sharing the actual real world costs around what it takes to, advertise and operate as an ashram. And look, I share all of that just because of the full transparency, so that you can see exactly what's going on behind the scenes, and that we're not trying to use this as a clandestine way to do anything untoward. Contrary, we really want to lead from the front and be an example of what karma yoga is and what genuine prosperity is, which is charity towards others for their upliftment. That's the most nourishing thing. That's the role of a karma yogi. So Jay Atmeshwar, enjoy the sharing, and please hit us up if you would like to join a retreat, or if you've got any suggestions on how we can keep going with the pay it forward. Much love.
Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Para Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. It's been a really, really exciting couple of weeks for us out here. Not going to lie, it's been a testing couple of weeks as well. We've sent a couple of emails out. I'm not sure if people have received them or not, but we've really radically altered the way that we're doing things out here. We hit a fork in the road where we really couldn't continue at the way that we were previously operating. So that's going to be the kind of core focus of what we're going to share tonight, and hopefully something interesting emerges, because there's quite a lot that's going on behind the scenes in terms of Rajni and my discussion on how best we can operate as an ashram and best do what we do, and also how that ties into our deepening understanding and experience of Guru Karya or Seva or service. So minor housekeeping points prior to jumping into that. We've got a soul retreat happening next week. There's still a couple of spots on that, and one in May as well. I think we're still looking for a volunteer for the May retreat. The other thing that may be of interest is that we've got the soul retreat level 2 happening on the 25th of April. And the really beautiful thing to know about that is it is also included in our new change to a very different pricing model for what it is that we do. So for those unaware, Rajni and I made the decision a week ago to transition towards a pay it forward, not to transition, there's no transition, just to stop operating in a commercial manner and work on a pay it forward basis. So there's quite a bit to unpack in that, but I'll wind the clock back a couple of years. And when Rajni and I first found ourselves out here, 2018, we were kind of stumbling around blindly in the dark. Leanne, was on some of the retreats back then. She's certainly seen early days of Kailash. Things were, we had no real kind of strategy around what we were going to be doing. We took over an existing accommodation business, and so the bills were being paid by renting the space to people who would come and use the place for holidays or whatever they would use the place for. It didn't exactly nourish Rajni and myself. I mean, we had quite a lot of resentment from that operating. We had a couple of retreats back then, and they were really nice, and they were beautiful community experiences. We certainly didn't try to make any money or pay the bills out of the retreats. It was merely a kind of cost covering exercise. We were paying our bills by renting the space, and it was kind of not nice to see the place being disrespected on a quite regular basis. You know, things like just drinking, alcohol, drugs, all of that kind of stuff going on. So, you know, I cracked the SADs, as I'm prone to doing, sometime in the late 2018, and said, "That's it. I'm closing it. There's no one booking in there. I'm just renovating for some time, and we're just going to open back up and rent the place out to yoga teachers and maybe run some of our own retreats." And so, I really kind of angrily closed the accommodation side of what we were doing, and then thought, like 5 months later, I don't even know how to get any yoga teachers to rent the space, and we've got a lot of bills, and I'm out of all of the money that I saved from the army. I better open back up as an Airbnb. So we opened up as an Airbnb again, and we went back into this mode of, I guess, resentful operations in our own space. We weren't happy, and we felt some inattention. And so back then, you know, Rajni and I had run a couple of retreats for the community group, and we thought, oh, well, let's start throwing some more regular retreats. Let's put some things out there, not just to existing meditators, we'll put it out there to the broader world. And of course, we didn't really back ourselves. We didn't have any marketing skills whatsoever at that stage, and we didn't really know what was what. And we made those first couple of retreats by donation, thinking if it's free, everybody's just going to show up because everyone likes free stuff, right? And so wrong. No one showed up. Even friends and people who knew what we were doing, like there was no value proposition. There was nothing that we weren't solving a problem. We weren't touching a place of depth in other people. We loved meditation and yoga, and we just thought, oh, well, if people kind of want to come out here, we'll share what we know and bumble around in the dark a little bit. And so that sense of donation operation was from a place of not really understanding the value of what we were doing. But our main bread and butter was renting the space on Airbnb. So it didn't matter that no one showed up, or those people who did show up would like tip us $100 or throw $100 in the box or whatever. Like we weren't staking the house on it. So, that we hid under the thin veneer of virtue by that donation model. Flash forward a couple of years after getting some reasonable or okay bookings from yoga teachers and renting the space to other people still, which was, we thought that was okay back then. We found that, COVID was thrust upon us. And then through COVID days, we had a community out here. And so in the community days, we introduced a volunteer option as well. So that was people coming out here and contributing service. And if people couldn't serve, then they could rent space. So again, we had this idea that, be it on the individual's work or energy that they're putting in to balance things karmically. And that was fine during COVID because there were state government grants that kept us alive. So we had a trickle feed of a small amount of money coming in to be able to support us during that period. So again, we weren't really dependent upon the contributions of others in that circumstance to survive as a place. Towards the end of COVID, as we've shared with many of you, our community kind of spectacularly exploded, and that left us in a position of, before I get to that, whilst the community was here for the last year, we started running retreats, and again, the majority of our income was either coming from state government grants through the COVID kind of support, or other accommodation venue bookings. So when we ran retreats, we started running them. We put a modest, very, very modest price on just about the costs. So the costs of food and the cost of utilities and some linen,
that was about it. It's about $300 for, 2 or 3 nights. And we thought, well, that's we're not doing this to make money. This is just cost covering exercise because we like doing what we're doing. Back then, really, the sorts of people that we attracted weren't the same sorts of people that we attracted in the last couple of years. As we made the transition to becoming an ashram, or once we received Swamiji's blessings to the ashram, we ditched those retreats, which were bringing in a little bit of money. We ditched the accommodation side, and we opened the doors, and we opened them by donation. So we thought, great, we don't even have to do any commercial transactioning whatsoever. We can just be a purely donation-based venue. And as we've shared with you all, that was a catastrophic failure. We had, a huge cancellation rate. People who showed up didn't really, donate generously. There wasn't much of a culture around what we were doing, and we just didn't have any real numbers to make it viable. And we thought, back then that we were a shoe-in to be purchased, or at least been doing a joint venture with the meditation community in Melbourne. And so that led to this situation where we ran out of money. We were kind of fully exhausted and had no notion of what the path forward was. So out of that kind of very dark period for us, this is like the first 4 months of us operating as an ashram. So it was like, oh my God, this place is working on us big time. We hit a really low point in terms of understanding what God wanted us to do with this place. We thought naively that we've become an ashram. We've got Swamiji's blessings. Everything is just going to magically unfold perfectly all right. And it was brutal. And we really had a crisis of conscience and thought to ourselves, like, well, how the hell do we pull ourselves out of this quite dire situation where no one really values what we're doing? We don't know how to communicate about it. We don't know how to routinely get people here. We don't know how to charge a premium. We don't know the first thing about business. It was an honest look in the mirror that I had to have, and I thought, well, okay, let's do what we need to do to get out of this. Let's focus our energies on retreats, because we know that we can run a good retreat. We know that people want retreats. We just need to learn how to get people on them a little bit easier. So the goal of the whole the foray into marketing was to make life easy for ourselves and to find those people who we were here to serve. And so, I got sucked into the kind of online and entrepreneurial world, which is actually quite a great little space on the internet. There's really interesting people, some a little bit more business oriented, some more service oriented, and a lot of people who mix both. So there's a real notion of business as service in that kind of little online community. Not little, it's millions and millions of people, I would say. There's no central kind of command. It's all just kind of chaotic YouTubers here and these marketing gurus and this person teaching this thing and this person selling this course. I'm sure you've come across this stuff if you've scrolled on social media. Certainly on my social media, they throw all of their stuff at me. And anyway, we went into that space and had to wade through a lot of the sales bullshit and nastiness to find out how to actually speak to people in a manner that would enable them to take action to come onto a retreat, because we wanted to serve people on the retreat. And in the midst of that, we realized that we were really, really undercharging for what it is that we were providing for people. We were offering our heart and soul and a beautiful place and 5 days of accommodation and food. And, we thought, well, we've got the ashram, so we don't need we can just offer it cheaper because we don't need to worry about hiring a venue. Completely ignorant to the fact that we've got a year-round
lease agreement on the ashram. So yes, we don't have to go and pay a commercial hire fee somewhere else, but we have 2 mortgages to pay as an ashram. So, like it was my kind of naivety in the business space. So even though, we were also very much prisoner to donation-based retreats, then very cheap retreats. And so the difference between a $300 retreat and a $600 retreat for us was like, oh my God, if we charge $600, no one is going to come, because it was really hard to find people who were willing to pay $300. There's not going to be anyone that's happy to pay $600 to come and join us out here on a retreat. And the contrary thing kind of happened when we increased the prices. People were looking to have real problems solved. There was deep trauma, there was deep difficulties, and people were ready. Not judging, but when people paid $300, by and large, they did not listen as attentively as if they paid $3,000. And I know my own experience on that front. If I spend $10 for something, it's like, do I go? Do I not go? If I spend $1,000 on something, I'll pay a little bit more attention because I've sunk all of that energy into the thing. So we noticed there was some real benefit to that commercialized model of charging a price for the value of what we were offering, because it enabled us, first and foremost, to keep the doors of the ashram open so we could survive, pay mortgages, and be able to deliver the retreats and pay for all of the things that we needed to pay for around the place, which surprisingly expensive. But somewhere in there, the tail started wagging the dog. In order to become good at continually delivering, I mean, the question was no longer around, can Rajni and I and the ashram deliver consistently powerful retreats to people who are seeking service. We ticked that box. I just counted them. I think we're going to start actually having numbers for each of the soul retreats. But if you include the first sort of half dozen retreats, which were kind of, soul retreat, but not called the soul retreat, we're up to 30 now. So, we know after having done that 30 times that we've got it dialed in. It's a nice experience. We love doing it. People have profound experiences. The question, that was never the difficult thing. Maybe in the early days it was a bit more challenging. The hard thing was getting off the back of 5 very long, full-on days and answering sales calls on Monday morning, or dealing with people who wanted to inquire about joining a retreat and having to go through the process of speaking to them in a manner so that they would actually make a decision to come and join us on a retreat. That was a relentless process for me. And so for 18 months, it was run a retreat, get off that retreat, work on filling the next retreat, run that retreat, and fill. And so I did that for 18 months straight, without a month off. I think there was 1 month off when Adi was born. That was about it. So, but we doubled up in some of the other months. So, there was as many retreats as months in that time there. And, when you do something that regularly, you get systems in place, you get a bit better at things. I certainly did. But there was a real cost of that cycle. The cost of that process that we had built was, in order to get somebody to come to the ashram, we needed to convince them in advance that the thing that we were going to be giving to them was supremely valuable. And so that often required a lot of personal connection with the people who were looking to come on a retreat. If I was going to spend $3,000 on something, I'd want to know the thing that I'm buying is going to actually, solve the problem that I'm seeking, a solution or relief from. And that was very fruitful in many regards. I still recall a lot of the chats that I've had with people here, and those chats and conversations were beautiful. You guys are the rare people who took action. It was realistically probably a 4-to-1 or 4 or 5-to-1 ratio of people that I would speak to and then people who would join a retreat. So you can imagine, if we had an hour conversation with you, that means that was an hour of a powerful, deep, powerful, very moving conversation that enabled you to come on the retreat. Then we served you highly, but we had 4 or 5 other hours of our life going on to people who would sit on it, think about it, and for indefinite periods of time, organized times to follow up. We would then show up for the follow-up conversations, and either they wouldn't follow up or we would be lost in this constant battle of communicating with people who really didn't have an interest in joining us or didn't have the courage to make a decision one way or another as to whether or not we were there to serve them. Now, I don't blame those individuals at all. It was completely our doing to open ourselves. We built that process. We built that process without a lot of strategic vision for the costs that were involved in it. And some advice I got recently was, I was sitting there thinking that the only cost to the getting people onto the retreat was the money that we were spending on ads, which was also escalating, to close to $10,000 a month to fill a retreat. So you can see Ashram spending a huge amount of money to get retreats that are making a good amount of money, but a large amount of that money is going back into Facebook and making Mark Zuckerberg bloody rich. And then in the interim, I'm spending, if 10 people on the retreat, for ease of calculation, 10 people join the retreat, that's 10 one-hour conversations, that's 50 hours, that's an entire week of the month with an entire working week of the month spent having conversations with people who didn't really want to join us. And so there was a huge, what's a week of my time worth, and I hadn't valued that in the equation. And so, this little bit of advice, the penny started to drop. We were like, wow, we're over-invested in people. We are going out to people to try and convince them that what we do is valuable and useful. When we know that it is valuable and useful, we've seen it work for so many people. And so that process of going out towards others bled our own energy dry, and very much the unconscious burden built up inside of me, and I almost had a breakdown. I think the tipping point was, a very strong retreat on the back of a scare with the fire situation, and then a couple of call outs with the CFA and some panicked moments and an evacuation from here. And the psychic load got a little bit too much for me. And I thought, this isn't living anymore. What we've created is something that is moving us away from the strategic direction of the ashram. And it's requiring a lot of work. And that's not a smart way to do things. There's a good sense of work, and there's also work for work's sake. We were just burning a big fire with no one gathered around it. And so Rajni and I had to have an honest look in the mirror and go, well, do we want to actually live like this, in this kind of constant cycle of only getting enough to get by from a retreat so that we can get more people onto a retreat and keep running on this process? How long can we do this for? Another 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Are we going to lose it eventually? What service are we going to be able to render to others if we're completely cooked from this process? And so then the penny started to drop. 5 years ago, when we ran donation-based retreats, it's because we didn't know the value of what we were offering. Now, my honest appraisal is that this practice is priceless. It saved my life on multiple occasions. So it's priceless to me. So to put a dollar price on an experience that and practices that are priceless to us felt at odds with what our deeper truth was. So the point of what we're moving towards with the pay it forward
model is not to create the opportunity for cheapness and for people to save money, but for people to connect to the value of the experience, not by giving the money to the ashram, but giving it in support of somebody else to go through that experience. So the first thing that Rajni and I did was go, well, we cannot do monthly retreats. It is too quick of a turnaround cycle. We're not well rested enough. The reason why we were doing retreats monthly was because we needed that amount of revenue to keep the place sustained. So we thought, well, we have to work backwards from what it is that we can actually deliver to people without burning ourselves to a crisp. And so we settled on a kind of 6-week turnaround, which I think turns it into about 9 retreats a year, which doesn't sound like a lot less than 12 retreats a year or 13 retreats a year. It is. For us, it means that extra 2 weeks between retreats, we've got time to actually focus on what the broader aspects of what the ashram is about. Supporting people who've already been here, creating content that is useful for people, and promulgating the practices beyond just those retreats. So really the vision came forward through understanding our own work capacity. So we said, well, we're going to cut things back to what is manageable for us. We're going to bump the numbers up a little bit to what we feel is comfortable in the yurt, which is 15. Previously, we were working on about 12. Thought, well, okay, 15 is about right. 12 retreats of 12 people is 144 people per year. 9 retreats of 15 people is 135. So it's actually quite close when things are kind of balanced. And then we thought, well, what is in alignment with the practice of karma yoga? That is Guru Karya, Seva, service. What is at the essence of that? And one of the really interesting lines of questioning Rajni and I had with each other was, if we had $1 billion in the bank account, what process would we run? Would we still do the soul retreat if we had that much money? If we didn't need to worry about how to keep the doors open, how would we live? And I thought, yeah, we would still do 9 retreats a year. Not 9 of the same soul retreats. I think we'd get a little bit more experimental with the retreats because there wouldn't be the kind of pressure for them to be full and actually, generate the revenue. But we'd still do probably about 9 retreats a year, even if we had all the money in the world. So I thought, okay, now we're actually beginning to approach something that is karma yoga, not business. And so the process of disentangling what was Nabhi chakra or the working self, the ego, to sustain and nourish that work center, karma yoga is a practice of the heart fundamentally. And we thought, well, okay, this is our time to cut the energy off from that and go, well, this is a step into a higher realm for the ashram. So we've got a lot less retreats happening. Well, not a lot, enough to give us a bit of a rest. But then we thought, well, what would we charge? If we had that magical $1 billion in the bank account, how would we go about structuring the pricing for our retreats if we didn't have financial pressure? Would we give it away to people? No. Our experience, when you make there be no commitment whatsoever, what happens is people just don't show up. They get caught by something else, they're not invested in it, and not much happens. So we thought, okay, well, you definitely can't take a registration on a retreat for free because it's just going to be chaotic. So we thought, well, okay, how much advertising do we need to do to get enough interest to fill a retreat? And we thought, well, okay, let's recoup a little bit of the admin cost and make that a figure that is actually emblematic of what the ashram needs to get someone here. And historically speaking, it's been a lot more than $300. It's cost us about $500 to $600, not even including my own time, to find someone to join us on the retreat. So, it's a huge amount of money on advertising. And so here we thought, well, okay, if there's less threshold to joining the retreat, we can find people hopefully a little bit cheaper. Like, it's not going to cost us as much to, spam out the entire world. We can just kind of focus on a smaller pool of people. So that money will cover the ad cost and administration. Then we thought, well, like, what do you charge for an experience that for some is profoundly moving, that a price wouldn't be able to be put on it? Well, we thought, well, like, what is that money going to? And Rajni and I did all the calculations, and we thought, well, these are the yearly costs of the ashram. And this is everything from insurance through to rates, through to repairs, maintenance, tractors, cars, everything. This is the yearly cost of the ashram. This is if we run 9 retreats a year of 15 people, this is how many people we can serve. Divide that by that means that each person coming on retreat, if the average that they spent on retreat was X amount of dollars, then that would make the ashram sustainable. And what do I mean by sustainable? It would earn enough to not go out backwards. Like, it would at least be able to keep itself moving forward. So the reality speaking, honest to God reality of the numbers of that we crunched on this, it costs us about $2,000 per person on retreat per year to just to keep the doors open. That's with Rajni and I getting our expenses covered by the ashram, our food expenses, and a stipend for the kids, for the family. And that's about it. We don't particularly live a lavish lifestyle. We consider ourselves Sevadari, or servants or service givers of the ashram, and we're happy. We've given ourselves into that. We don't want to do this to get rich. But that figure was quite alarming to us, because we thought, like, naively back in the day, that, oh my God, we're charging $2,000 a retreat. There's going to be so much more money for everything, and we can build facilities, and we can expand, and we can do charitable work. When we actually looked at the numbers, no, that's what it costs to keep the place operational. That's it. So we thought, okay, well, we don't want to charge people $2,000 for every single retreat that they come here on. Some people are going to have that, and that's, their grace and their opportunity. Other people are going to have significantly less than that. So we've opened to a deeper level of faith inside of us that if all we recoup upfront from people is enough to keep the ads going, hopefully when people come out here and have an experience on the retreat, they'll be sufficiently moved to understand what the value of that experience is, and then to contribute towards somebody else joining or coming onto a retreat on the ashram as per their means. And so that's really the pay it forward model. If someone puts in $1,000, it means that we need someone else to cover that or offset that with $3,000. Now, who pays $3,000? Who pays $1,000? That's not my business. That's the law of karma. And something that Swami G has shared in the Guru Karya when he's instructed people in the UK at the ashram there, he said to Rajni that, like, there's, or a group of which Rajni was a part, that 9 people will give like £1. One person will come and give £100. It'll be it'll be fine. That's the law of the jungle. That's how this stuff tends to work. So we are strapping ourselves in to see how things work according to these principles. By our calculations, we've got not a huge amount of reserve in our, we don't have so much capital up our sleeves to make this model work. So, we're doing a lot of praying and just trusting a little bit blindly, perhaps, that it will work out this way. What is the other option for us? Having come to the realization that we do not want to commercialize, for us, sacred practices, and we don't want the ashram to be beholden to a commercial model that squeezes Rajni and my attention and time in between retreats, constantly trying to drive people onto the retreats. If we want to move away from that model, what other choice do we have? And so we've thought, well, okay, we're going to have to, it has to be this, and we're going to make it work. So, for you that are here, that are connected to us and have come to the ashram and are still participating and still meditating, please don't take the fact that we've done this as a devaluing of what your contribution was. Without every single person who has showed up and paid the commercial rate to the ashram, we wouldn't be able to be in a position where we're doing this. I mean, we're not doing this off the back of like a huge amount of money. We're in our overdrafts pretty much already. So like we're doing this off the back of a moral call to change the way that we're operating, and that's in part due to the confidence that we have because of the experiences that we've seen you have on retreat, and so how we go about allowing our students that and allowing people on the retreats to feel a sense of generosity by their contribution rather than what it felt like a lot of the time, to be honest, on the phone when I'm trying to essentially convince someone to spend a couple of $1,000s to come out on the retreat. There was a sense of begrudging exchange. I'm giving you the money, now you come and fix my problems for me. And this is just not yoga. That's not the yogic tradition. And so, I'm happy to have tried that. I'm happy to have ticked all of those boxes. But karma yoga is about the service that you can do for others. And so if somebody is profoundly moved on these retreats, then at the end of the retreat, there will be the invitation for them to support somebody else going through that experience. And it's not about me. It's not about Rajni. We get taken care of by the ashram, but it's about that. How can I support somebody else? And this is really the entry into that positive aspect of the heart chakra. So, we've done a lot of work to go from there to there. Obviously, we've got a strong crown with the practice of meditation, with our sense of surrender and devotion above. But really the operating model was probably a little bit heavy down here, and we've come back up there. So all of the stuff that is associated with this center is surfacing as well. All of the emotion, all of the fear, all of the worry. And so we're just quietly watching that and trusting, and then working our asses off in the background, like to change all of the communication materials and to actually make this a reality. So hopefully this creates a space and an ashram that you can be proud to be associated with, and something that you can encourage people who might not have had the thousands of dollars that were required for a full commercial rate to be able to join. We are happy and welcoming of any contribution or no contribution. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. If someone comes on the retreat and they just do not think the thing that we are doing for them is valuable, I do not want a cent from them, because it's not about them paying or not paying me. It's about, if there is the perception of value, can I give that forward? And so, I know this has gone on a bit tonight, but there's a beautiful teaching in there for how to conduct karma yoga in our own lives, my life away from the ashram. Whatever I cultivate is not mine to keep. The best nourishment is in the offering of that gift to others. And what has been my direct experience is the more you give, the more you get. The more you offer, the more comes to you. The more you offer. The more you offer with the expectation that you're going to get back, the more you block the process. So I say that to remind myself that, throughout this next couple of months of journey, where we'll be kind of,
flying by the seat of our pants and you know, trying to make it all work. That it's the, you know, karma yoga is there to free ourselves from the shackles of karma, right? And the shackles of karma are tied to our worldly existence. This is why karma yoga is a spiritual practice. It's not about doing good in the world so that you get good in the world. Sure, that's fine if people are uplifted in life. That's a great thing that's come from your service. But first and foremost, karma yoga is a practice for spiritual liberation for you, the practitioner of the karma yoga. You just can't be so self-centered whilst you're doing it, or else it just becomes, you know, not karma yoga anymore. So we focus upon the other, but we're doing it with the knowledge that this is for the purpose of my liberation. You know, I'm not running a successful ashram. You know, the model that was previously kind of, I think, unconsciously in my head was off the back of a prosperous ashram, we can do great charitable works. But things are shifted. It's from doing what charitable things we can do, the prosperity will flow. And I'm trusting that will. And the prosperity that does come, be it big numbers or little numbers in the bank account, will be numbers that are profound and meaningful to the people who are involved in the organization. So, you know, watch this space for a little bit more kind of detail as we flesh things out. We've given the website a nice kind of rehash. So if you haven't had a look at the website in a while, please get on there, because there's a lot of FAQs and stuff that we've put up there to make it very accessible for you or for other people that you may wish to share this with. So I will be putting this one up on our YouTube and circulating it with the other members, so that there's a little bit of understanding of where we are and where we're going. And we welcome your feedback. If you've got you know, suggestions, please don't give us the suggestions. You guys are crazy, this is never going to work. It's like, we're already beyond that. Like, we're all in. It's going to work. Trust me, it's going to work. But if you have any of the finer points of like, have you considered this? We are all ears right now, because you know, we're not so proud to believe that we've got all of the answers regarding you know, how an ashram should operate, and certainly we are the sum of the people who show up and do the stuff. So speaking of showing up and doing stuff, let us sit for a beautiful meditation. Say Jai Atmeshwar to you all, and thank you very much for tuning in, and it's beautiful to see you, Doreen, Holly, Jack, Jody, Olivia, Rosetta, Julie, Kate, Rajni, Linda, Michelle, and Gregory and Melinda. Yes, thank you. And God bless. Have a lovely meditation.